Welcome back, folks. This is Shane. This video is for anyone who wants to finally get out and play live, whether that's a blues jam, an open mic night, you might be rehearsing with friends, whatever the case may be. This will help you get the sound that's in your head from the amp before you even get out and play live. Now, if you're inexperienced and it might be the first time you're going to a blues jam, this is really important to get your sound right, know what's going to happen when you click an overdrive on if you're using pedals, and also just what kind of response the amp will give you in that particular context. Now, I've got two separate pedal boards. I've got a smaller one, which is this one right here, and I've got the same pedal board you've seen for 5 years, which basically gets me through any type of situation. So we may start with the big pedal board through this amp, but for the first time tonight, I get to take my PV Classic 5410s out with me, and it's a magical sounding amplifier. Some could argue it doesn't need pedals, but the beauty of an overdrive is you can kind of get the same tone at a lower volume, which is awesome too. So I'm going to experiment around with this and show you my process to get all of my sound sorted before I go out. Now, if you're playing in a room with wooden floorboards, it's going to sound much brighter than it would in a carpeted room. But I know this room that we're going in tonight, it's going to have carpet. It's a dead sounding room, which is really good for tone. So I can pretty much dial it in here in the studio and get the sound that I know works. So I'm going to experiment around with my pedals and try and get a lead sound, a clean tone, and also my sort of off clean tone sorted before I even leave the house. And if you're starting out going to blues jams, this is the kind of stuff you have to think about. Get it up at gig volume and make some noise. Don't be scared to do so if you can where you live, because it makes the biggest difference. Playing everything at low volumes doesn't represent gig volume. So crank it up, let's make some noise. On my pedal board is the Royal Flush Dual Overdrive. I've got the Shelly Pony Boy, which is basically like a clon. I've got a VS Audio Vibler, which is my modulation pedal, and Chicalis Audio Works Tillet delay pedal over here. This is, of course, my tuner, which is my most important pedal. All right, let's kick it off. So I'm going to start on the clean channel of my amp. Now, the great thing about this PV Classic is I can run it on the drive channel and then just boost it with a clon, or the Pony Boy in this case. So we'll try both. We'll see which one works best, and if I don't need all of these pedals for the gig, then I can take the smaller pedal board out and use the drive channel. So let's have a listen to this. This is my clean tone. Now, to me, that sounds beautiful. If you don't know your amplifier that well, turn up the volume first, get it to a spot where you think is loud enough for potentially jamming with people, and then set the EQ to 12 o'clock. I've got all the EQ on my amp at about 1 o'clock, and that's it. So nice and simple. Let's take a look at the pedal board. So on this side of the Royal Flush, this is my first solo tone and rhythm tone. And you might be saying, how does that work? So I'm going to turn this on. And I'm going to start with my volume control down, and I want it to sound similar to how the amp sounds. So that sounds pretty great. If I turn up, it's actually a little bit on the bright side. So I'm going to turn the tone control down to 11 o'clock. That sounds great to my ear already. So I'm pretty much sorted at that point. I might actually just back the volume off a hair and turn the preamp down a little bit on my interface because it's close to clipping. And that should give me both my clean tone now and also my first lead stage. And I'll show you what I mean. So I can start with the volume down. And that almost sounds like my amp with the volume control up. Now, it's not as nice as that clean tone, but the beautiful thing about this is I can choose one or the other. But if just for simplicity, we can leave this on. That'll cut the mix beautifully. And again, if I turn up. All right, to my ear, that sounds great. Now, I've got two other overdrives here, so I can either use one or the other as a boost, both, whatever the case may be. But what I'm going to do is start with this side of the Royal Flush to begin with. And turn the gain up to 12 o'clock. Start with the volume down and the tone at 12. We'll just try this. I know it's a bit hard to see on this pedal. All right, we need more volume and more gain. Let's try this on bridge. Now, what I'm listening for as someone who's played live a lot is it to sound dirty to you, but also sound clean to the audience. It sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but everyone says, man, you got such clarity in your tone when I play live. And the reason why is because the top end is still there. It's almost an illusion. It's still very dirty, but it sounds very clean still. It's weird. So that's one side of the pedal, and then the other. So that's pretty cool. And what I normally do is like to set up the clon with more gain and just use this as like an option if that isn't working for me for some reason. So let's take a listen. So this is why you do this ahead of time, because that pedal with the left side of the Royal Flush is absolutely killing it. That sounds so much better to my ear. So now I have those options available. If I want a less pronounced lead tone, I can use both sides of the Royal Flush, or I can click on the Pony Boy and get the tone of the gods there. So that's pretty cool. Now with my delay, I usually think about how I want it to sound all night. I don't like to mess with it. If I can get it to sound right straight away, then I'm in business. So let's have a listen. All right, analog on. All right, so there's too many repeats for me. I usually like about 3.5. All right, we'll turn the time up and the mix down. All right, this is making it far less prominent. So that's clean with delay, Royal Flush. And then the big lead tone. Yeah, man, that clon tone's absolutely ripping it. But I'm just going to mess with the Royal Flush a bit. I feel like the clon needs a little bit more tops as well, so I'm just going to turn that up. Let's try this again. Turn up the volume. I mean, that's basically the tone I go for. So it's all set up and ready to go. The modulation you can set up however you like. I usually like this to have the full mix and the full depth, but turn the speed down. Let's have a listen. Now, if you don't know your modulation pedal, experiment around and find a sound that works for you. But for me, that sound works. Now what we're going to do is try the drive channel and see if I actually need all of these different dirt pedals. Let's give it a go. And now you're listening to just the drive channel on the amp. This is with the gain set to about 10 o'clock. I'm just going to click the clon on and see what happens. That's a huge sound, but it's not as pleasing as the clean channel in this particular scenario. So let's try the Royal Flush on this channel. I mean, what a tone, right? This is the benefit of having two overdrives. You can kind of make it work. So if I was to choose the drive channel on this amp, I'd stick with the Royal Flush. If I'm using the clean channel, I'd use one side of the Royal Flush with the clon for that big lead sound. But now I can start with it off and get a really nice rhythm sound. And when when I turn down. Anytime you're playing rhythm guitar at your first jam or whatever the case may be, turn your guitar volume down. Turn up when you're soloing. Don't just chug away with your rhythm all the way up volume-wise. It's no fun for anybody, especially if someone is trying to sing. So just keep your volume down when you're playing rhythm. And that works. Whether I've got the pedal on or off is great. But I think if I had to choose, I like this clean channel. Now with the Pony Boy. Now if your amp has just a clean channel volume, set it up at about half if it's a 20 or 30 watt amp, somewhere around there. Now if you've got a 45 or 50 watt amp, you won't need to crank it up as much on the clean channel. This is all subjective to the amp that you've got, right? Some Fender amps get really loud at 1.5. So yeah, just experiment around with the volume, but you won't need to push your amp too hard, especially if you're using overdrive pedals in this scenario as well. I love that tone. I think it sounds pretty great. I'm just miking the amp up here with a single microphone. It's the AEA N22 ribbon microphone. And now I feel confident that I can just plonk this on the floor at the venue, make some subtle adjustments to my amp's EQ, dependent on the room and all that kind of stuff. If the floor is a little bit different, might be different materials in the room, might be a smaller or larger room, all that kind of stuff. Turn the volume up or down and I'm pretty much sorted. So it's that simple to get going, but do this before you take your gear out and play live. It'll make a huge difference. Thanks for watching.